Hi grade 11s, and finally it is your turn. Welcome to Learn Extra Live, and as you can see standing with me, today we're going over Maths Lit, and Peter is here and we're talking about graphs and tables.
That's
Peter,
right.
tell us more about graphs and tables.
Well, I'm not going to tell you now because we normally go for an ad break and then we talk first. But first of all, I see you went on TV last night.
No, I wasn't.
Were you missed? Did you miss it?
I missed it a lot. It felt really strange not being here, and I was missed. Look, even Isaiah said, just tuned in waiting for the next lesson. Where were you yesterday, Indy? Good to see you in studio.
Oh,
see, I was missed. See, Peter doesn't believe me.
You know, my wife also missed me last night.
Where were you?
No, nowhere. She tried to hit me. I ducked. She missed.
That's brilliant, guys. Peter, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go for a little break.
Let's do that.
And as soon as we get back, we'll be reading out your jokes that you're going to be posting on the wall, I'm sure. Shortly. See you now after the break.
Cheers.
Graphs are cool. Yes? Hi guys! Hi. Can you believe that we are live? Fantastic. Okay, now that we're back, guys, don't forget to please post onto the Facebook page. So that's www.facebook.com/learnextra. Also chat to me on Twitter @learnextra. I'm sitting behind the page and I'm waiting for all of your questions. And now I know you guys know that it's grade 11 and now it's finally time for Peter. So please guys, send in some jokes, some good ones so I can get him back. You know what I mean. And without further ado, Peter, on to you.
You know, Indiana, you really talk a lot, hey? But I can't be too critical because I know I also talk a lot. Except when I was born. You know, I was actually born at a very young age. And after that, that whole experience of being born just traumatized me. I never spoke for a year and a half. It was something.
It was a very silent year.
Very silent year. All right. Folks, today is all about graph work. This is one of my favorite sections in the whole syllabus. Okay, absolutely love this section because you can play around with numbers, you draw lines on sets of axes. It's fantastic. Okay, so without any further ado, let's go straight and look at an example. And the reason why I'm saying we're not going to go into any whiff-waff kind of explanations is mainly because this graph work section is started in grade 10. And in grade 10, you looked at different types of graphs. You looked at a straight graph, you looked at a graph that does a funny shape like this, you looked at a graph that sometimes does a funny shape like that. And the maths people out there would give them funny names like straight lines, like hyperbolas, like parabolas, but we're not those kind of funny people. So what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the graphs and understand some of the shapes and things. Okay? Best way to learn is by doing examples. So without any further ado, let's do this. Example number 1. Tebby makes and sells necklaces at a flea market along the N2 just south of Eshowe. She sells her necklaces for 10 Rand each, but it cost her 3 Rand 50 to make each necklace. She also has to pay 200 Rand a month for renting her stall at the flea market. Now guys, earlier on, I was having an interview with John, and he was asking me, where do I get my ideas when I actually put questions together? And you know what? I actually get my ideas from my personal experience. So every time I go on holiday, if I see something, I think, oh, now that's a good question. Well, one day, my wife and I were traveling from Eshowe, and we were traveling towards Durban. And along that stretch of road, there's a lovely little flea market there. And so we stopped there, and there I saw a dear lady making and selling necklaces. And I thought, you know, this is a great maths lit question. Why? Because it can involve a bit of graphs. And number 2, and most importantly, because it's based on a real life situation. Okay, so Tembi was her name, and she was making these necklaces. And so I started asking Tembi a few questions. And I said to her, Tembi, how much is this necklace? She said, you know, for me, special price, 10 Rand. For everyone else, 5 Rand. So I felt kind of special about that she was only charging me 10 Rand for a necklace. In fact, now that I think about it, I think I was ripped off, because I bought a lot as well. Okay, but nevertheless, there I was buying necklaces at 10 Rand a necklace. So I said to her, Tembi, how much does it cost you to make a necklace? Because there were beads and there was wire that she had to weave these beads onto, and then she had to put a little clip, and she said, "Oish, R3.50 it costs her to make one necklace." But she said, these people here at this flea market are not good people. Because every Saturday when I come to this flea market, they charge me 200 Rand just to sit in this spot. And I thought, let's look at Tembi's situation. And let's put the whole thing into a question. So here's the question. Tembi makes and sells necklaces at a flea market. Okay? Now, I've put the information down, and there are a few things we're going to underline. First thing is that she sells her necklaces for 10 Rand each. Next thing, it cost her R3.50 to make them, and more importantly, or more horribly so, they charge her 200 Rand just to have her stall at this flea market. Alright, so let's do a bit of mathematics. What we're now going to do is we're going to look at this table that's going to come up on your screen, this table behind me, and we are going to now try and fill in all these missing blocks. Before we do that, what we need to do is this. In this question, I'm asking you to work out her expenses. How much does it cost her if she sells no necklaces? How much does it cost her if she sells 50? If she makes 100? If she makes 150, etc.? How much money is she bringing in if she sells no necklaces? If she sells 50 necklaces? Okay? How much money is coming in there? So that's what we need to look at. Before we do that though, we've got to be able to come up with some type of formula or some sort of way of trying to figure out how we're going to calculate this income. We've also got to then try and figure out, well, how are we going to calculate her expense? So this is what we're going to do. So her expense, and I'm going to write it here, expense is equal to, well, what is her expense? Well, first of all, for every necklace she makes, she's got to pay out R3.50. So it's R3.50 times the number of necklaces she makes. Okay? But there's another expense. And the other expense is that horrible 200 Rand that she has to pay just for having her stall at the flea market. So we're going to add 200 Rand over here. Okay. Now, what is her income? Well, her income is 10 Rand for me, for other people, 5 Rand for me, special price. 10 Rand times the number of necklaces that she sells. So we have two different formulas, as it were. But take note, in my formulas, there are no X's and Y's. Okay? There is something called expense, and expense is R3.50 times the number of expenses. In the old days, when you were unfortunate and you had to do mathematics, they would write that equation as y is equal to 350x plus 200. We don't need to do that anymore. Okay? We're talking real life terms. Expense instead of a y. Number of necklaces instead of the x. So bearing that in mind now, we can solve this problem. I'm going to do the income first because I think that's a little bit easier. And it's always good to start on an easy note and then to get more and more difficult. Okay? So on the easy note then, income. Now if she has a bad day and she sells no necklaces at all, well, no one's going to give her any money. Okay? So she's going to have an income of absolutely nothing. If she sells 50 necklaces, well, how much money is she going to get it? Well, it's 10 Rand for every necklace. 50 necklaces is going to be 50 times 10, which is 500. Okay? I'm going to leave out the R sign just because I'm running out of space here and I'm trying to write nice and big so you can see it. Now, 100. If she sells 100 necklaces and they each 10 rand, should we ask Indiana or should I just do it? Let's ask Indiana. Indiana, 100 necklaces at 10 rand is going to give me?
1,000.
There we go. And Indiana's with us. The breakfast today did her the world of good. Okay. 150 times 10, 1,500. This is not hard stuff, hey guys. This is straightforward basic. 200 times 10 is going to give me 2,000. 250 times 10 is going to give me 2,500. 300 times 10, 3,000 rand. Okay? Sure. So Tammy's a very happy person. If she can manage to sell 300 necklaces, she's bringing in 3,000 rand, which is exciting news. But I've got bad news for her, and I'll tell you why later. Her expenses. If she sells or makes no necklaces, right? So we're going to pretend that she only makes the necklace while you're there. She says, what color do you want? How big do you want it? Etc. like that. Okay? Because a necklace around the arm goes quite nice. If she wants to make one around my waist, well, we're going to need a whole whack of beads. Okay? I can just imagine what my producer's thinking now. So, expenses. 3 rand 50 times the number of necklaces. If she makes no necklaces, it's not going to cost her anything. Or is it? Well, the making of the necklaces is going to cost her nothing. But she's still got to pay those horrible people that are charging her 200 rand to sit there and sell her necklaces. So even though she sells no necklaces or makes no necklaces, the fact that she's there on site, she's got to pay the flea market 200 rand. So although nothing sold, her expenses are 200 rand. Now, what happens if she makes and sells 50 necklaces? Well, let's look at our formula, and we're going to bring up our calculator here, and let's do this, okay? We're going to attempt to bring up our calculator. Ah, there she is. Okay, so it costs us 3 rand 50 for every necklace that she makes. We're going to pretend that she's made and sold 50 necklaces, okay? But not only is that her expense, but remember that horrible 200 rand. So we're going to add 200 rand to that. And here's our answer. 375 rand are her expenses. So let's write that down here. Okay? 375 are her expenses. What happens now if she now sells 100 of these necklaces? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to change that 50, and no, that takes too long, let's just clear it. We're going to say 3.5 times 100, plus we're going to add the 200 rand. So she's going to spend 550 rand. Let's write that down there as well. Oh, no, let's try to get rid of the calculator. Okay, there we go. So, 300, what did we say it was? Now, after all that, let's go up here again. 550 it is. Okay, cool. 550 rand. Okay. I'm going to miss a few, and let's just look at this 300, because the principle's the same. Okay? No matter how many necklaces she sells, we're still going to say so many necklaces sold times 3 rand 50 for every necklace plus the 200. So let's skip a few here and let's go now straight to the 300. So here we go. We're going to clear our calculator and we're going to say 300 multiplied by 3 rand 50, add my 200 equals, and we get 1,250. So 1,250 is her expenses. Easy? Understand? Of course you do, right? It was very, very basic. Cost her so much to make the necklace, and it cost her so much to rent out the store every single Saturday. Income, straightforward. Every time I buy a necklace from her, she gets 10 rand. Cool. Now the next part. Now using the set of axes below, sketch a graph indicating the income and another indicating the expense. Now, just before the grade 10 session, before the grade 11 session, we had a grade 10 session. And Haley said something rather important. And at this point, I'm going to interrupt myself again, because I always do. But what I want to say is this, even though you're in grade 11, guys, you should be watching the grade 10 series as well, because they're little things that you picking up, or could be picking up. They're little things that would jolt your memory and say, I remember doing that in grade 10. Now we're following on from grade 11. So this whole series should be looking at grade 10 and grade 11. If you're in grade 12, you should be looking at the grade 11 and the grade 12 section as well, okay? Because remember, mathematical literacy, like a lot of other subjects, we're building on from the previous year. Okay, now what Haley did say was this, that if I'm plotting a graph, I don't have to plot every single point. Maybe I'll find a first point, a middle point, an end point, draw my line, and then check, is my graph kind of going in the right way? So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to ask Indiana just to remember 3 little facts.
Got it.
Fact number 1, 200, 200. The next one, 100, 550, and 300, 125. Got it?
Got it.
Now, let's move on then. So what we're going to do is this. We are going to plot these points. And we said when no necklaces, what was her expense?
200.
200. Okay, now, let's just pull in the reins a little bit. Let's just sort something out before we even carry on with this graph work. There are 3 things that we've got to have on our graph. Number 1, we've got to have a title. Okay? Tell your examiner, tell your teacher, this graph is called. Okay? And I'm going to say this graph is the income and expenditure. So I'm going to write that and say this is my income, okay, and expense graph, okay, of necklaces, let's say. The next thing you've got to have is you've got to have a good set of a label, your set of axes. And it's been done for me here. It said the cost in rands and the number of necklaces. Now the thing that I like here is that it says here in rands. Because it says in rands, I don't have to write R signs in front of every number. If I just said the cost, then yes, I've got to write R1000, R2000, R3000. But I don't have to do that because my label's telling me they're rands. Do we understand that? The next thing we've got to look at is the scale of my graph. Now normally what happens in matric, and up to now it's happened, and I don't see any reason why it should change, but up to now what happens is they give you a set of axes in the exam. And they'll give it to you as an answer sheet and say, on the answer sheet, draw the following graphs. Okay? So they give you that set of axes. Now sometimes they may even put in a few numbers like this one has. If they've done that, you've got to try and determine now what every little block represents. So let's have a look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks represent 1,000. So one block must represent 200. How did I get that? Said 1,000 divided by 5, 200. Guys, we can all do that. So every 5 blocks represent 1,000. Every 1 block represents 200. And I'm going to write it on the graph right here. I'm going to say, wait, this is 200. Why am I writing that? Just to remind me, so that I can remember that every time I'm doing my calculation. Okay, having said that, back to Indiana. Income, where are we starting?
Okay, so what is this, the 100
At
one?
naught?
Naught was 200.
200, absolutely. So that's this point over there. Great. At 300, what was it?
At 300, it was 125.
Okay, so let's go. So we know this is my 1,000 line. So that's 1,000. This is 1,200. This is 1,400. Now we've got to come somewhere between my 1,200 and my 1,400. Okay? And we were looking for 1,250.
5.
Okay. So halfway between this little block, I've got 300. So halfway between the halfway must be the 50. So I'm going to say my graph should be round about over there somewhere. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw that graph. And I've got a special little tool here, which is absolutely remarkable, because it's going to help me draw a straight line, I think. So here we go. From 200, I'm drawing, oh dear, we've got to change this color. We can't use black there. None of you are going to see that at all, are you? I don't know what, okay, let's try to get rid of that. There we go, and we're just going to say delete that funny line. Sorry guys, I don't know why I did black. I know you can't see black on black. It's an age thing. Alright, so let's try to find a straight line here in a different color. Let's use this green arrow. Okay, so we're starting from this point, and what we're doing is we're trying to find this point over there. Voila, there's my graph. Let's just bring this guy down a bit. Okay, now I've got so many graphs. Can you see the line though? Okay? You see, you mustn't try and get too technical.
I know.
I've been watching you on the computer, Indian, and I think, geez, I wish I could do what you do. Now I'm trying to do it, and it just doesn't work.
That was a very fancy
It's like
line.
when a man tries to do it.
It was a very fancy line. I liked your line.
Did you like mine? I just messed it up towards the end.
I know, yeah. It was looking promising.
Let's move on, because our dear producer is going to start moaning us about time and things. So, all right, so that is my graph. Now, what graph was that? That was my expense graph. Remember, even though no necklaces are sold, I got an expense there of 200. Okay? Now we're going to sketch the income graph. Right. If I sold no things
graphs
whatsoever,
if you sold no graphs,
no necklaces, where do I start?
At zero?
At zero, absolutely. Okay. When I sold 300, where did I go to?
To 300.
To 300 necklaces, I made 3,000 rand, remember?
Yes.
Or she got in 3,000 rand. Okay, so quickly then we're just going to try and draw this wonderful graph again. Let's go the pink route this time, I think. Okay, so from 0, we're going all the way up to 3,000. She sits now, smart graph. Okay,
see?
So guys, two different graphs altogether. Expense graph and an income graph. Notice that at some point they cross, and we'll talk about that, I think, after the advert. But I'm not allowed to say there's an ad break. It's not my job. That's Indiana's job.
So fantastic. I love it when I get to talk and get to take away the limelight from Peter. I'm sorry. Guys, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. Get your questions in. If there's anything you're not understanding, at facebook.com/learnextra. Chat to us on Twitter @learnextra. I love the fact that I see all the usual grade 11s on the page. Noxipedia, I'm glad you're joining. Also grade 12s. There's also ZBM13 from Twitter. I don't know her real name, but I think it's fantastic. So guys, get chatting. This page is yours too. Let's take a break. See you now. Hi guys, and welcome back to Learn Extra Live, grade 11 Maths Lit. I hope you're all tuning in. Grade 12s, I hope you're also tuning in. I think that we're going to go straight to Peter because I don't want to take any more of his time. But before I do, I just want to say, please chat to me on facebook.com/learnextra. Also on Twitter @learnextra. And now for Peter, take it away.
Sure, after all that. Right, folks. I'm sure if you've just tuned in, we were looking at a wonderful scenario. If you've been with us for a while, fantastic, you'll know what we're talking about. But basically, I went traveling with my wife. We drove along the south coast from Ishawi all the way down, or the north coast, from Ishawi all the way down to Durban. And along the way, we stopped and we found someone selling necklaces. And the whole problem we've been dealing with at the moment is this woman who's been selling necklaces and trying to make a bit of a living. Okay, Indiana, one thing I will say is I really enjoy traveling. Love it, absolutely, it's fantastic. The only thing I don't enjoy is flying. I hate flying, I've got to tell you, I've got this phobia about flying. The fact that they call the buildings in an airport a terminal, I mean, that in itself is just mind-boggling. And I've never understood as well, you know, you get these black boxes in the aeroplane, and whenever the aeroplane crashes, they always find the black box. Okay, I don't know why they don't make the whole plane out of the same material as the black box. That to me would make sense. Whenever I fly, I like to sit on the black box, because then I know if something goes wrong, they're going to find me or something like that. Okay, but we're getting carried away. So I was traveling from Ishawi down to Durban, and while we were traveling then, we found this woman selling these necklaces. For me, special price 10 Rand, for the rest of the population 5 Rand. I felt very fortunate about that. And before the break then, we were working out the expenses that she had to pay out and the income that she got from making those necklaces. We said that every necklace cost her 3.50 Rand to make, but added to that expense was the 200 Rand just for being at the flea market. Skanda, ne? And then the income, she's making 10 Rand from me anyway for every necklace that she sells to me. Now, this income figure looks wonderful, right? Let's have a look at it on your screen. Look here, if she sells 300 necklaces, she's making a whopping 3,000 Rand. In fact, even if she's bringing in 3,000 Rand, even if she sells 50 necklaces, she's bringing in 500 Rand. Now, folks, that's a lot of money. But I've got some bad news for our dear lady. And the bad news is this, that her profit is not going to be those high figures. Because you see, to make a profit, you've got to take your income and subtract your expense. Eesh. So that doesn't sound too good. How great it would be if your profit was your income. Okay? But it doesn't work like that, hey? You've got to pay for all the beads she uses. She's got to pay for the string she uses. She's got to pay her 200 Rand for having her stall at the flea market. That can't be part of her profit. So let's calculate what her profit is. Now I said to you that profit is equal to, and I'm going to write it up here just so that we do know this, profit is equal to my income minus my expenses. So before the break then, we calculated her expenses and we calculated all her income. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this and we're going to try and calculate her profit. Okay. So let's do that. So it's income minus expense. Now I'm going to start from the 300 and work my way that way. Okay? So let's start on a positive note. So 3,000 Rands are income and expenses 1250. Out comes the calculator and we say, right, 3,000 minus that expense of what was it again? 1250. Minus 1250, and she's making a profit of 1,750 Rand. So all she needs to do is sell 300 necklaces, and she's got a phenomenal profit for the day. I wish I earned so much money in one day. Okay, so let's write this down. 1,000, oops, there we go, we've just frozen the whole thing again. Okay. Right, there we go. So, 1,000, what did we say profit was? 1,750. I've got a remarkable memory. It's coming to me much better than it used to.
Is it good? It's good, because now you have to do it all by yourself.
I won't tell the viewers that the producer's giving me the answer. Not yet, but yeah. Okay, so 2,500. That's what her income is, 2,050. 2050, and we are going to subtract, 2,500. My memory's getting bad here, even with the help of the producer. 2,500, and we're going to subtract this expense amount of 1,075. So subtract 1,075, and we're going to land up now with a profit of 1,425 Rand. Again, not bad for one day's work. 1,425 Rand. Jeez, that's amazing. Now, I'm not going to do every single one in the table because obviously we've got time rushing against us. Let's just look here at the 100, shall we? Now, 1,000 minus 550 should be around about 450. Okay? Now, let's have a look at this. 500 minus 375. My income of 500 minus my expense, I've got a profit of 125 Rand. Now that looks discouraging, doesn't it? You're bringing in 500 Rand, you got it in cash, and then you fork out all the other money, and next minute you're only left with 125 rand. How disheartening is that? Wait, it gets worse. Let's look what happens here. If she sells no necklaces, she makes an income of absolutely nothing. If she has an expense of 200, her profit now is minus 200 rand. How horrific is that? Imagine going off for a day's work and you pay someone because you had to work. So you go to work, you pay the 200 rand and you go home again. And your kids say, how much money did you make? And you say, well, it wasn't such a good day. In fact, come to think of it, I actually paid out 200 rand. Oh, something's wrong with the system. But guys, that's how business works. And any huge corporate business will tell you that every month they've got to reach certain sales before they start making a profit. So our dear lady here, and what was her name? Do you remember her name? Temba was her name, hey? Now Temba has gone to all this trouble, but she's actually made a loss of 200 rand. So there comes a time where she's got to sell so many necklaces before she makes a profit. Now notice when she sells 50 necklaces, she's making a profit of 125 rand. Okay? So we know she's got to sell somewhere between 0 and 50 necklaces. So somewhere in here, she's got to sell necklaces in order to get a profit to be 0. Okay? And it looks like 125 rand just floated off the screen there. Okay, so somewhere between, it's like airy business this. Something's happening in the studio. It's like ghosts of the past. Okay, so over here somewhere, she's got to sell so many necklaces until her profit is 0. When her profit is 0, we're going to call that my break-even point. Because that's the point, my income and my expense is equal. And that's the point where she has made no money, but she doesn't owe anyone any money now. Okay? Whereas before, if she sold no necklaces, she'd owe someone 200 rand. She doesn't have it, but she's still got to pay. At the break-even point, she'll have money, but she'll give it all away. So she won't have any, but she won't owe anyone any money. And that's an important point to get to in business, that break-even point. Because any necklaces she sells after that break-even point is profit. That's just going to pour into her. And then she's going to be a very, very, very happy person. Okay, so here we've got everything. What we're going to now do is this. We're going to our next slide, and on our next slide here, I've actually shown all these calculations that we've done. But now what we're going to do is we're going to sketch the expense, the income, and the profit, all on the same graph. Okay, so in the end, there are a few things I want you to remember. 0 equals minus 200, and 300 equals 1,750. Okay? Now we've also cheated a little bit because on this set of axes, and we've done it before, so I didn't see why we had to do it again. We drew the income graph and I've drawn the expense graph, and there they are, two lovely graphs, right? Now we're going to draw that profit graph. So to draw the profit graph, let's plot those points that we spoke about earlier. So at 0, what is our profit?
Minus 200.
Minus 200. Okay, now folks, let me just go on a tangent here quickly. Normally, in mathematical literacy, we're getting graphs somewhere over here. Okay? Sometimes, like it's the case now, we get a graph in both these regions over here. Okay? In the good old days, no, not the good old days, the bad days, when you did core mathematics, you used to call this a quadrant. So we'd say we're dealing in quadrant 1. And here we'd be dealing in quadrant 1 and quadrant 4. Shows how they get things mixed up, because you normally count 1, 2, they count 1, 4. Okay, so, but what we're going to do is understand that our graphs, normally in this quadrant over here, but sometimes we deal over there, like is our case now. So let's have a look at that. Here it is. Okay, we're dealing in this quadrant. Now we're going to take it a bit further. We're going to say, you know what? We've got to start there at negative 200. And then, let's just make this bigger so you can see it on our screen. Can you see that on our screen? Okay. My producer says she sees it, and if she can see it, we can all see it. Now, at 300, what do we get?
1,750.
Okay, cool. Right, so it's 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, and 1,700 is right there. In fact, I actually marked it before or during the interval. Just so I make sure I got the right spot. Now let's join those dots and let's see what happens. Okay, so here we go again. We're not allowed to use black on a black ground. Why? Just because. Now, so we're starting at 200 and I'm going all the way here to that point. Sure. That is now my profit. Now, folks, there are a few things I want to show you on this graph. Okay? Let's have a look. The first thing I want you to take note is this, and I'm going to do it in yellow, that at this particular point where my income is equal to my expense, my profit is nothing. Now look here, in direct line with that, look at my profit. Okay? It's nothing. So where my income and my expense cross, my profit is absolutely zero. Okay, we'll just move that arrow again. There are weird things going on in the studio today, aren't there? Okay, do you understand that? Can you see it? Now here's another thing. The gap between my income and my expense graph, so this gap over here, is the same as the gap, because what is income minus expense? It's profit. So this is my profit. And this over here is also my profit. And if you measured the distance between my income and my expense, it would be the same as the distance between my profit and my line that says 0, okay, and my axis line over here. So this profit, let's call it profit 1, and this is profit 2, even though they're the same profits, we're just using it. It sounds like a biblical thing, eh? We're talking profits. Okay, so profit over here, profit over there. Can you understand that? Now, that's not a concept I suppose you have to know for mathematical literacy, but I find that interesting because you can see it. It's right there, which is absolutely wonderful. Okay, so that concludes our question on our necklaces, okay, which I think is quite great.
Fantastic.
Are there any questions?
What we're going to do is we're going to take a little ad break, and when we get back, guys, if there is anything that Peter's been going over that you don't understand, please let me know on the Facebook page. I think it's fantastic. Did you know that even Mohammed is watching the show, and I know that he's watching with his big sister, so I think Mohammed's about 9 or 8, so I think it's fantastic that you are watching. I've got a joke for you, Peter, from Kashifa for during the break. I'm going to tell him, I will, and I think what we'll do is go to a break and we'll see you now. Hi guys, and welcome back. I hope that you're all thinking very hard of those nasty questions to put on the page for Peter. I think what we're going to do now, while I'm waiting for your questions to come through, is I'm going to hand back to Peter, and the last 8 minutes of the show, we'll go over them. Sound good? 5 minutes. 5 minutes of the show.
Sounds good.
I know Peter gets upset when I take up too much time, hey?
Well, we don't have very much time already. Time just flies by. It's unbelievable. Talking about flying, I love flying. No, I hate flying. I said I hate flying. But one of the places I once had to fly to was to London. I had to go there for a conference, and it was quite interesting. And there the policemen are called bobbies. I don't know if you know that, which is quite interesting. And it was actually on that particular trip that I was in London that I passed a man that had 3 heads. And the policeman, or the bobby, was right in front of me. And you know what the bobby said? Hello, hello, hello. I enjoy that joke. I think I'm the only one who does. All right, let's move on. This next question is an exciting one. I love it. Why? Because it shows me 3 totally different graphs on the same scenario. It's a fantastic question. And if you can understand this, geez guys, then there's quite a lot in graph work that you understand, and you'll be in a good position for your exams. So let's have a look at that. A telephone company allows 3 options. 1, they're going to charge you 3 Rand per minute. 2, they're going to charge you 200 Rand a month and 2 Rand per minute. And option 3, they're going to charge you 400 Rand a month plus 1 Rand per minute. And they're also going to give you 200 free minutes a month. Okay. Guys, lots of you have cell phones. You know what a cell phone looks like. You know how it works. You know how it works better than I do, okay? I'm old, I'm grey, I don't quite understand this whole thing of that you can listen to music with it, and you can, some cell phones even change the remote on the TV. How daft is that? Okay? I remember I had to go for change of my cell phone, and the first thing I said to the lady was, look, I've got a camera at home, I've got a computer at home, and I've got a hi-fi at home. I just want something that goes ring, ring, and I can say, hello, Ma. Okay? That's all I wanted. But cell phones today are so complicated. But you guys know all about it, a lot more than I do. But do we understand the costing structure of those cell phones? So the first thing we kind of look at is the system called pay-as-you-go. Now, pay-as-you-go, as you know, you go off to a supermarket and you say, I want airtime. You buy your airtime and you take your cell phone and you push in the code that's given to you, the PIN, and voila, you got the free airtime. Now, you don't have a contract for that. You don't pay a monthly subscription. All you do is you pay for every minute that you talk. That's it. So option 1 is like a pay-as-you-go. 3 Rand per minute. So let's fill in this table. If I don't speak at all, okay, so I've got my cell phone, and there it is, and I put it down, and I just look at it. End of the month, I haven't made a call. You know what? I'm going to have to pay absolutely nothing, right? I haven't used airtime, so my price now is no money, okay? Please note, it's all in rands. I'm not going to put them in again because I'm going to try and write big and fit it all in. Now, if I speak for 50 minutes and every minute costs me 3 Rand, it's going to end up costing me 150 Rand. 100 minutes, I'm going to end up paying 300 Rand. 150, 450. 200, 600 Rand. Okay? 750 Rand. And finally, 900 Rand. So if I talk for 300 minutes, now for me, that I just don't understand how someone can talk for 300 minutes. Okay, on a cell phone anyway. I love talking, but not on a cell phone. Very impersonal. My wife and mother-in-law loved. Okay, they can talk for 300 minutes within 5 minutes. That's how much they talk. Right, so 300 minutes, 900 Rand. Let's have a look at this option 2. Option 2 is like a contract. The cell phone provider is going to say, right, 200 Rand a month plus 2 Rand for every minute that you talk. So what we're now going to do is say this. If I speak for no minutes, I still got to pay 200 Rand. Why? Because I have a contract. And my contract says 200 Rand before you've even made a call. So that's what I'm going to pay, 200 Rand. No call talking cost me 200 Rand. Okay? If I speak for 50 minutes, every minute is 2 Rand. 50 times 2 is going to be 100 Rand. But then remember, I've got to add the 200. So it's 2 times 50, which is 100, plus the 200 Rand, 300 Rand. Okay? 100 times 2 is 200, plus the 200 contract, 400 Rand. 150 Rand times 2 is 300 Rand, plus the 200, 500 Rand. The 200 times 2 Rand per minute. Sorry, the 200 minutes times 2 Rand per minute. 400 Rand. Plus the 200, 600 Rand. Okay? And then this one is going to be 700 Rand. And finally, this guy over here is going to be 800 Rand. Right. So there's option 1, 3 Rand a minute. Option 2, 2 Rand a minute. But it's going to cost you 200 Rand up front. Option 3, you are only going to pay 1 Rand a minute. But there's a little trick. 400 Rand up front, please. But it does say you get 200 free minutes. So let's work this out. So what we're now going to do is this. I'm going to say we've got 1 Rand a minute if I don't talk at all. So I buy this phenomenal phone with this wonderful contract, and all I do is look at the phone and I show people, I show off, I say, check my phone guys, check my phone China, Indiana, check my phone. But I'm not going to use it. Why? Because I don't know how to, I'm just going to show everyone. It's going to actually cost me 400 Rand to show off that month. Let's say I make 50 calls. Okay, or 15 minutes worth of calls. Now, at 1 Rand, it's going to cost me 1 Rand per call. That's 50 Rand. But this specific contract says, hey guys, you're going to get 200 free minutes. So for 50 minutes, I'm not going to pay anything. All I'm going to pay is the contract, 400 Rand. If I speak for 100 minutes, I'm not going to pay anything for those minutes because I get 200 free. But I've got to pay the 400 Rand for the contract. If I speak for 150, I'm not going to be charged. But I've got to pay the 400 Rand for the contract. If I speak for 200 minutes, I'm not going to have to pay for the calls, but I have to pay for the contract. Now, let's have a look here. What happens if I make 250 minutes worth of calls? Well, the first thing is this. I'm going to not have to pay for the 200 minutes. I'm only going to pay for 50 of them because I get 200 free. Okay, so what's 50 times 1? It's 50 Rand. Plus the 400 is 450. If my wife talks for 300 minutes in a day, or 300 minutes and 5 minutes, if that's possible with her routers. So she talks for 300 minutes. I'm not going to pay for all 300. Why? I get 200 free. I'm only paying for 100 minutes. Now 100 minutes times 1 Rand a minute is 100 Rand, plus my 400 Rand contract, 500 Rand. There it is over there. Okay? Are we happy? Now the exciting thing. We're going to draw the graphs. So let's do it. Notice graph number 1, and we've got to talk quick, I've got 2 minutes. Graph 1 starts at 0, ends at 900. So graph number 1, we're going to start at 0, and let's find one of these funny lines again. Starting at 0, and where did I say we're going to end? At 900, huh? There is graph number 1. Okay, option 1. Option 2, what we're going to do now is we're starting at 200 and we're going all the way to 800. So starting at 200, let's try and find another color here. Let's go blue. We're starting at 200 and we're going all the way to, what did I say?
I can't remember. What was, repeat?
Okay, here we go. We're starting at 200, going to 800. Here we go. So from 200 all the way up to 800. Okay, and finally, the next graph we're going to do is this. We are going to start at 400. Why are we starting at 400? Because that's our contract. And do you remember it stayed at 400 all the way to 200 minutes? Once it got there, it started to climb. And it climbed all the way to 500. So we're going to now climb all the way to 500. Have a look at our graphs. That is so exciting because we've got a graph that starts at 0, we've got a graph that starts at 200 because we have a contract fee of 200, we've got a graph that's just going to go horizontally and then it's going to start to climb because we have some free minutes. And after all that, I think we're down to about 30 seconds and then we've got to go away.
Well, actually, we've got 1.5 minutes
Okay,
left.
well, let's keep talking.
Okay,
All right.
okay. I just need 30 seconds to finish, so go. I just need 30 seconds.
Right.
Go.
So what we're going to do is when we look at these graphs, take note that at some stage when we make a few calls, this option 3 is not a good option because we're paying 400 Rand. But if we start here, soon as we make more than, 140 minutes worth of calls, then option 4 becomes my cheap option. Look at option 1. It's the cheapest option all the way until round about over here, until around about 140 minutes, then it's no longer cheaper. But the important thing is, this option 2 is never cheaper. Okay? I wish we had more time to look at it. Indiana, over to you.
Fantastic. All I need is 30 seconds to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Grade 11s, for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you next week. I just want to say, Kashifa, Mohammed, I know they're sitting with their mom and even watching the show. I think that's awesome. Family time. And I even know that Spoomy has been having a little study session with his friends. So guys, that's fantastic. So for grade 11s, goodbye. Grade 12s, you're next. And grade 11s, we'll see you same time, same place next week. Goodbye.